James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Chris Paul, and Kawhi Leonard are the names that have owned the MVP talks over the past 5 years. But is it time for the award to pass on to another? Giannis Antetokounmpo is set to dominate the league and do his best job to seize the MVP crown this season. When Giannis was drafted in 2012 with the 15th pick, most people are extremely intrigued as to what the insanely athletic swingman from Greece would do in the league. Many predicted he would be a giant bust, and while some thought he could be an extremely good role player or starter, very few thought he could be an all-star, let alone an MVP. But Giannis has already proven most of his doubters wrong when he carried the Milwaukee Bucks and became an all-star last season. He was everywhere the whole season, covering multiple positions and racking up blocks and steals on the defensive end, whilst dominating in pick and rolls and in the paint on the offensive end. But this season he has a chance to do what no one predicted and what many great NBA players never have the chance to do: win the MVP. Before we begin looking at Giannis and his shot at one of the most prestigious awards in the NBA, let's take a look at what you need to do in order to win the MVP. The award criteria tends to change slightly every single season, but it ultimately comes down to 4 main things. The first being team success. The most valuable player is meant to go to the player who added the most value to a team. Generally, this value comes in the most desired thing in the NBA: wins. The winner of the MVP ought to drive their team to a higher level of success than expected or that they would achieve without them. We saw this with Derrick Rose winning in 2011 as he led the Bulls to 62 wins and the first seed in the East, over LeBron James. Without Derrick, this team wouldn't have gotten anywhere near 62 wins, and thus it is a fantastic indicator of the value he added to his team. Last season, the Thunder only won 47 games and finished 6th in the Western Conference. But imagine how bad they would have been without Russ. Again, you can see the value he added to his team. Whilst I do think this was an outlier, and it will be quite rare for a player to win less than 50 to 55 games and win the MVP. Next up are individual stats. Stats aren't everything in basketball, but they are one of the best indicators of how a player is performing, especially when you take advanced statistics into account. But in order to win the MVP, you do need an MVP stat line. I averaged out the stat lines of every single MVP since the year 2000, and you get the following stat line: 26.2 points per game, 8.4 rebounds per game, 6.8 assists per game, and 15.9 win shares per game. If a player averaged around this stat line, they would easily be considered one of the best players in the league. You can see why, as it is very, very close to LeBron James' averages over the past 5 years, and he is considered an MVP candidate year after year. Obviously, some stat lines will be different to this. Steve Nash's MVP years had far less points and rebounds, but almost double the number of assists per game. Thus, you can see that a stat line is a good indicator of who may be eligible for the MVP, but it isn't everything. The third factor, I think, is the level of skill of a player's teammates. The better the teammates, the harder it can be to attribute team success to one player. Harden and Westbrook benefited from this last season, as they led inferior casts to the playoffs when compared to their contemporaries. Players like LeBron tend to struggle with this. He has had Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love on his team the past 3 seasons, and before this had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and attributing his team's success solely to him is quite difficult. Thus, when a player leads a supporting cast that is perceived as weaker to a strong record, they'll be given more weight in the MVP discussions. Similarly, those players that make their teammates better will be given huge weight, as it shows impact in the locker room and on the court in multiple ways. LeBron and players like John Wall and Chris Paul benefit from this, as they set their teammates up and give them opportunities for success. The last factor is the X factor. The MVP is an award voted on by members of the media, and to get their vote, you first have to get their attention. Now, most media members are very switched on and do their due diligence. However, a huge presence in the social media and traditional media spaces will inevitably create some kind of bias or weight towards a player. Huge performances on big nights, amazing highlights, smart marketing by the player and their team, and consistency are the keys to creating this. Last season, Russ and James Harden dominated from the first day of the season. Both put up some historical nights and had countless mind-blowing highlights. Whilst I believe Kawhi Leonard was an equally valuable player due to his effectiveness on both ends, I feel his play got slightly left behind due to not having 42 triple-doubles, multiple 50-point games, and not having the ball in his hands 50% of the game. This is no slight on the Spurs, Kawhi, or Harden and Westbrook, merely a modest observation that there is an X factor to the MVP. Now let's take a look at Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks through our created MVP criteria lens. We will combine the categories involving his teammates and the value he adds to his team before looking into statistical production and his insane X factor. The Bucks won 42 games last season and have a very similar core roster going into this season. They lost veterans Spencer Hawes, Michael Beasley, and Jason Terry, but kept almost everyone else that played valuable minutes. whilst I do think that they should look at re-signing Terry as a great veteran presence and decent backup point guard, letting the other two leave hardly impacts the team. The value of having the same players over a few years is extremely understated in the NBA. Players learn each other's tendencies, develop trust, and grow closer and more comfortable in their roles. Basketball is a team game built on chemistry as well as skill, and the Bucks should win a few more games this season than last purely on stability. But actually looking at their roster, and you see a team full of long, athletic players designed to complement Giannis' skill set. Malcolm Brogdon and Matthew Dellavedova should split minutes at the point guard and are the perfect players for Giannis. Selfless, good defenders who make smart passes and can knock down open threes. Then on the wings, you have Chris Middleton and Tony Snell, defenders who can also knock down threes, and Middleton has shown he can do a lot on the offensive end as a second option. With Jabari Parker out injured, I wouldn't be surprised to see Giannis start at the 4 next to John Henson. Giannis looks like he's put some weight on over the offseason and can use his length to defend 4s and has a fantastic knack for grabbing rebounds. This starting lineup is solid, but without Giannis they would look like a bottom half of the conference team. With Giannis creating havoc in the paint and being surrounded by shooters, they could be one of the best teams in the East. Their defense should also be more consistent, with no Jabari Parker and having Middleton return to play a full season. A consistent defense in the regular season is one of the best way to win games. Take a look at the Utah Jazz, the Spurs, and the Golden State Warriors. For these reasons, I think the Bucks have a really good shot at 50 plus wins and a top 4 seed in the East. Finally, let's take a look at Giannis himself. Giannis looks poised to absolutely explode. Last season, he averaged 22.9 points, 8.8 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 1.9 blocks, and 1.6 steals per game. On top of this, his production has increased massively every single year he's been in the league. If Giannis continues his historic improvement, there is the potential for him to have a stat line of around 26 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals per game. That would be one of the best stat lines a player has ever put up on both sides of the ball in the history of the league. It is also exceptionally close to the stat line of the average MVP of the past 17 seasons, except with way more blocks and steals. And then there is the X factor. Giannis has this in spades, with ridiculous dunks, full court transition highlights, absurd blocks, and amazing passes for someone of his size. Giannis practically goes viral every time he steps on the court. I also fully expect him to drop more triple-doubles, have some 40-plus point nights, and really grab the league's attention next season. Lastly, there is Giannis' advanced statistics. They absolutely love him, and it should only get better from here. Every single year in the league, Giannis' usage percentage has gone up, whilst his turnover percentage has gone down, indicating the work he has done tightening up his handle and improving his basketball IQ. Furthermore, his offensive box plus minus, his defensive box plus minus, value over replacement player, win shares, and true shooting percentage all doubled last season. This shows Giannis' growing skill set and awareness on both ends of the court. If he makes another jump this year, then fear the deer, because the Bucks will be coming for the top of the Eastern Conference, and Giannis will be coming for the MVP. He'll face some opposition in the usual candidates, but with Chris Paul and Harden on the same team, Westbrook now having Paul George, and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant still being on the same team, a lot of the usual MVP candidates won't have their best MVP-type seasons. With Curry leaving Cleveland, I can see LeBron dominating, especially if Isaiah Thomas is out, but LeBron would have to make an effort to play 75-plus games and really exert himself in the regular season, something he hasn't done for around 4 years. If he doesn't, then there are very few players left in the league with the same potential, skill, and opportunity to put an MVP season together like Giannis. And this is why I believe Giannis will be the MVP of the 2017-2018 MVP season. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like down below and a comment on whether you think Giannis will win the MVP or if you think someone else will. And if you want to see more NBA videos, then make sure to subscribe below as well. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day.